Hey everybody, Zeal Brothers here once again with another video. This one is in response to an editorial talking about paternal leave. For some companies, when you have a baby, the man can also take paternal leave. And some people don't like that and some people do. And so this editorial is in support of paternity leave. Um, but he first quotes somebody who's against it. And this is what the quote that his opponent says. Whoa, great for fathers to spend time with their kids and support moms. But any man in an important position who takes 6 months of leave for a newborn is a loser, tweeted Joe Lonsdale, the co-founder of Palantir Technologies and a venture capitalist. In the old days, men had babies and worked harder to provide for their future. That's the correct masculine response. This was a response to Dan Primack's tweet commenting on how Joe Rogan didn't even realize paternity leave existed. While perhaps Lonsdale is being intentionally antagonistic and outrageous in order to generate a response, the content of the tweet itself is dangerous, coming from someone with as much influence as he has. Lonsdale suggesting that men who stay home with newborns are losers. But what does that say about moms who want and need to stay home with their children? The implication of his tweet is that women are either losers for staying at home with their kids or aren't in important positions in the first place. Our values as a society are in jeopardy if we truly embrace work over family. Companies in most countries have much more progressive parental leave policies. And then his next argument, which we're not going to read the whole thing, is that after his moral case, he makes a business case that companies have better retention rates when they have paternity leave. So let's just talk about it and let's just look into his argument. His first argument is that the content of the tweet itself is dangerous. Now, the idea that somebody can say something is dangerous just because they put an idea that you don't like is something that is troubling, and it is one of the threats to free speech that we have in the West. And the idea is this: if you say something I don't like, and I don't like it violently enough, I'm going to say it's dangerous. And why is it dangerous? Because I don't like it. And if I don't like it and it's dangerous, I can say you can't say it. If I feel threatened by what you say, then therefore I can consider what you say violence. And if what you're saying is violence, you can't say it. So it's another way of negating an opponent's argument by saying they don't even have permission to say it. And that's in itself dangerous. And it's dangerous not in the sense that it is violent, but it is dangerous in the sense that this kind of sentiment is what is limiting free speech. This is the reason why you can't get on Facebook and talk about the sins of homosexuality, or you can't talk about transgender, how that's ridiculous. You can't talk about different things and different masculine and feminine roles, and somebody get offended. Now you off Facebook or off YouTube or whatever it is. And the point is that there are some people out there that are so petty and such a baby that they can't handle somebody making an argument that they don't like. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that he's suggesting new men who stay home with newborns are losers. Actually, he's not. He's not. And that is deliberately twisting his argument, because he says any man who takes 6 months of leave. 6 months is a long dang time. Half a year. And he said any man in an important position. Now, here's the thing. If you are in an important position, you can't afford to be away from wherever you are for 6 months, half a year. You can't do that. A pastor can't be away from his flock for 6 months. He wouldn't have a flock left. I can't imagine, even in my role as a manager, and I'm a low-level manager, even in my level as a manager, I can't just leave for 6 months and expect my job to just be the same. I'll just pick up right where I left off. That would be terrible for my guys. So when you look at it and you just multiply my level of importance times 100 to be like a CEO or to be running some big department, I think about the guy who was running the transportation department for the United States, how he took that leave for a kid that he adopted. And when you look at somebody like that, it's just ridiculous that he would ever take any kind of leave. Because here's the thing, his role is more important than his convenience of dealing with a newborn. And if you feel that that is wrong, you don't have a sense of priority. Now, the second thing that he makes the argument and says, what does it say about moms who want and need to stay home with their children? Nothing. because men and women are not the same. And I know that some people don't like saying that, but it is simply true. Men and women are not the same. Our mental makeup is not the same. Our roles are not the same. Our bodies are not the same. When it comes to birth, the mothers have to do so much and the men don't have to do anything. That right there should tell you our roles are different. Men don't got to do jack. I sat there and watched as my wife gave birth. I couldn't do nothing for her. It was frustrating to me, but at the end of the day, I don't have a role in that other than supporting her. That's not a real role, right? So she's going through all this pain and I'm just sitting there saying, you can go through it. I'm really not doing much, right? If I was not there, she would have gave birth just fine. She wouldn't have been as happy, but she would have did it just fine. And so here's the thing. When it comes to newborns, you have to acknowledge the difference in the biology creates a difference in role. Or if you want to get bigger than that, you could say that God created men and women to have different roles, and he gave them different bodies that suggest what roles they should have. So when it comes to a newborn, just like birth is different for a man and a woman, so is a newborn. A newborn, I got a newborn at home right now. And he cares a little bit about me, but he don't care about me that much. Why? Because I can't feed him. His mother can feed him. He has a great bond with his mother because his mother is not only his source of comfort, he not only remembers being with her, he not only needs her comfort, he needs her for nourishment. She is his only source of water and food. So when you look at him, you could tell his dependence on his mother is way greater than his dependence on me. Now, what happens when he grows up? Who's going to teach him how to be a man? That's me. His mom can't teach him how to be a man because she is not a man. She doesn't know what it's like to grow up to be a man. She doesn't know what it's like to approach a woman and to get rejected. She doesn't know what it's like to go to high school and you might have to fight somebody. She doesn't know those things because she's a woman. She deals with different pressures. The same way I couldn't raise a little girl to be a woman. I can give her some principles, but at the end of the day, there are some things that I simply will not have experienced. And so I will not have the requisite wisdom to deal with some of the practical things that she would face. That's why when you look at a family, it is supposed to have both men and women. There are things that a wife can put into a son that a father cannot, right? We expect our mothers to civilize our sons and to give them some feminine perspective. But we expect the sons to gravitate towards the fathers as they get older and older and older to the point that they can learn how to be men. That is just a fact, right? So when we look at the roles of men and women, they are different. And when you suggest that the roles are exactly the same, that's where the argument went flawed, because there's not as much a need for paternity leave as there is for maternity leave. And that's something that people are not looking at. Let's put it another way. My wife gave birth to a whole person. Her body got tore up, right? She needs leave. There's parts where she couldn't even barely walk. So she needed that leave to recover. There was nothing that happened to me. I can lose some sleep sometimes and the baby is crying, but the truth of the story is, ain't much really happened to me. I really don't need much leave. The leave I took was more for her than for me. I didn't really need it, right? So I took a couple days, went back to work. That's the way it should be. So if you're one of those men that's taking weeks and weeks and weeks, I hope it's some kind of reason that maybe your wife is sick or something like that. If it's something that's beyond that, really, you need to think about what you're doing. Maybe you're not that important. If you're not that important, you can take as much leave as you want. I mean, hey, nobody miss you, but I would think that as a man, you would want to be in a position of importance. You would want to be in a position of leadership. And so you should want to be in a position where you can't afford to leave that long. And even in my little roles that I have, I can't afford to leave that long. In a church, I can't afford to leave that long. I just can't. Now, here's a second argument is that paternity leave increases employee retention. That argument is somewhat true, but here's the thing. It's kind of conflating something. And here's what it conflates. Any benefit will increase employee retention. It doesn't matter what benefit that is, because that goes into your total compensation. When you look at as an employee, the first thing you're going to look at is the salary. The second thing you're going to look at is the benefits. And then the third thing you're going to look at is basically the atmosphere, or another way of putting it is, do I like working there? Right? And you may switch those orders up depending on where you are in life. But for me, it's salary first, then benefits, then do I like working there? And the other one you might look at is the ability to grow in a company, etc., things like that. But the point is that any increase in any benefit will increase retention. So that argument itself, I accept it, but it's really a minor one. And it really was not in any reference to what the quote that he's quoting at the beginning of his editorial was even talking about. So just wanted to point this story out to you guys. Never let somebody try to pretend that men and women are exactly the same. And here's something that needs to be dropped. And it's kind of a little bit of a nugget for you guys. But I really have a big problem with people who act like men and women are exactly the same, but then turn around and celebrate somebody who transitions from being a man to attempting to be a female, or vice versa, and celebrates that as a big deal, because that's contradictory. On one hand, you say there's no difference, but then when somebody makes a change, you react with it and say it's a big change. You have to figure out which one you're going to do. Right? Is it a big deal or is it not a big deal? And these people need to get their arguments together. So it's just one thing that contradicts himself. And I see that all the time. I'm a big enemy of the social left. And we always on this channel are going to point out the truth as we see it and call it as it is.